They send our sons to war, a cruel charade, a racket built on blood, where fortunes are made. They lie about the reasons, spin tales so tall, while heroes die for profit and empires fall. Politics a game, a circus of clowns, puppets on strings. They parade through our towns. They distract and divide us with hate as their tool, pitting brother against brother in a world they misrule. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. Their anti-human agenda, it's plain as the day. They view us as bugs in their cold, heartless play. Eat insects, they sneer, while they feast on the land. Depopulation's their goal, with a tightening hand. Civil rights torn to shreds in the name of their peace. A police state rises where freedom's all seized. Gaslight us with propaganda, their lies never end, twisting truth in their grip till our minds start to bend. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. Order out of chaos, their sinister creed. They spark the flames, then offer what we need. Economic stagnation, they choke out our dreams, while divide and conquer rips us at the seams. They fan every fracture, they stoke every fight, left against right, till we're blind to the light. Yet beyond their pale lies the truth they conceal. A world where we're free, where our hearts can still heal. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the bed, then boy, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. So step past their warnings, their fences, their lies. See the world they've been hiding with wide open eyes. Beyond the pale, where their power grows frail, we'll reclaim our future and truth will prevail.
Hey, welcome everybody to a Wednesday night edition of RB Ham's Beyond the Pale. I am your host, RB Ham, and this is part two of what we tried to do last week. We went for an hour and a half before we got before technical difficulties, knocked us off the air. There was some conspiracy worries there for a while, but we kind of figured out that it was just simply a Rumble Studio technological glitch that has now hopefully been fixed, and it seems like it has been. But you know what the heck? It was fun for a while, right, Sean? Because you were talking when YouTube went down 10 minutes or 15 minutes before the rest of it went down. So anyway, that was interesting. But I don't have to reintroduce everybody because if you want, before you watch this one, you should watch last week's one. If you're watching this in replay, if you're live, don't go now because this is going to be a good part two. We were just starting to get into the UN agenda, the 2030 Agenda 21, the Sustainable Development Goals, and all that stuff. Because Mark, that was the passion of Mark's educational outreach, was trying to warn people what was coming by the globalist cartel, this global capitalist, crony capitalist cartel that has us under its grip right now, is manipulating everything behind the scenes, quite but openly in a way because they don't even make it a secret anymore. They're blaring it out. They hold in their think tank forums and at the World Economic Forum in Davos every year. They just say what they're going to do. It's right there. You can access it. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a conspiracy fact at this point. And so, Sean, you were talking about this sustainable development, how Mark turned you onto it, and could you relay the conversations you had with Mark when you started talking about this, and how he made you see the bigger picture?
Yeah, he had been studying this stuff for a while, and I came to him with some revelations that I had about World War II history, and um, yeah, we kind of came to the same conclusion with different paths, and that's what I find a lot of people in the movement. Right? It doesn't matter how you get here. We're all kind of coming to the same spot,
Mm-hmm.
and it's different for everyone. Right? It's encountering that lie that breaks the camel's back.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was World War II history. For Mark, it was 9/11. For some people, it was JFK. For some people, it was 2008, the housing crisis.
Some people, what happened during COVID woke a lot of people up.
For the majority of people, I say it was COVID-19, right? Like that was the bridge too far. Um, and again, it doesn't matter how you get here. I see Salim nodding, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you get here,
You
right?
eventually get here.
You
And once and
this is where you go. And once that uh, once that reveal happens for someone, it's pretty much impossible to go back.
Yeah, I was on JP Berg's show earlier today. His show called "Dumb the Wiser." Go to YouTube and subscribe, share, and like that video. He is on "Dumb the Wiser." That's what it just like DUMB the Wiser. JP Berg is a Canadian guy living out in Nova Scotia. He's been doing this podcast for a while, and we were talking about this. And his whole thing was, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Correct, Salim? Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So when you had your talks with Mark, Salim, how did you guys eventually get to the same point? At what point was it before or after you joined forces with the PPC? When did you firmly know that this agenda that Mark was talking about was the nefarious, you know, evil, malevolent thing that it was? Because I never thought of it as an evil, malevolent thing when I was a kid growing up and all. You knew it was kind of there. You heard about the Council for Foreign Relations, but you trusted these people. These were the guys who went to university and they were smart. They know what they're doing, right? What changed your mind about that, Celine?
Well, I mean, each individual, as I would tell my students, bring their own unique fingerprint. Everything else is, exchangeable. And I'm sitting across from my brother, the medic, you know, and so the uniqueness that we bring is the uniqueness of our experience, our background, and so on and so forth. For me, the beginning point is 2019, the election. just months before the election, when our path intersected, Mark called me up. He was very excited, and what brings people like Sean and Mark and me uh, from very different experiences and background to have come forward and put our name, and you did also, RB, but not in 2019, if I'm correct.
In 2019, that was before my time. I didn't find out about the PPC really until I met Mark in 2020. So that was, yeah. So you met Mark before I did.
Yeah. So the point I was driving at is, what is it that brought people like us, together on a platform that was put together by Maxime, and we invested so much energy, so much time, so much thought. Uh, so that very fact established for me that all of us who are here are concerned about one thing, whatever may be the differences and perspectives and experience. We are concerned about one thing: what is happening to Canada? Who's responsible for Canada? What has brought Canada to this position in 2019? That was um, the first term election for Justin Trudeau. He had been elected in 2015, and his record was what he described in 2015. Canada is the first post-national state. That in the famous.
Yeah. Mark would always mention that because he said
Yeah,
that was.
was the first interview that he gave to
Yeah.
the New York Times correspondent soon after the 2015 election. So what does he mean by this is the first post-national state? And he was celebrating that, and so on. So for me, that was the issue. Everything else can only be explained by the fact that people more like me, and speaking for me, I saw my country as a broken country. I saw my country as a fragmented country. I saw my country has no core value. I had come not out of choices, but out of seeking a refuge. I mean, the difference between in my age and Mark, and now my age and Sean, for instance, Mark and Sean are contemporaries. I suppose, is that correct, Sean? Both of you were contemporaries in terms of your age, your birth here.
Yep.
Mark was born in 1971. Um, so you don't have to disclose it. I know we don't have to put it there, but I Mark born in 71. I was in my late teen years. I was going on to becoming 20. So we had a vast age difference, vast experience, and I was running away, not alone, but my family. We were affected by a genocide. To me, genocide is not something abstract, theoretical thing to talk about. The destruction of uh, at that time East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, that is the destruction of Pakistan, the war with India, the refugees, the mass massacre. People have forgotten all of that. I mean, the people who experienced it, they know what it is. If I say to people in 1971, that one of the largest, most horrifying genocide took place in 1971 after 1945, people will say, "What are you talking about?" Because the only thing that they know about is Holocaust, as if that comprises the entirety of human history. So there was the 1971 war in India, genocide, and so on and so forth. And for me, it was to find another place. I was running away. There was no hope. I was a refugee. And Canada gave me a home. Canada gave me a place to find shelter and a new promise. And everything about Canada is something I came to love through my uh, good fortune. and devoted myself to the study of Canada. So when I met Mark, those were the questions, and those were the issues. And as I told Mark, people who keep on voting for the uni party, liberals and conservative, it is the definition of insanity, what Einstein talked about. You do the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. So you vote liberal, you vote NDP, and you vote PC, but you expect a different result. Why is this happening? Canada is a G7 country. It is an advanced, rich, you know, a country that the world envies for all that Canada has. And here in Canada, it's like, being born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You're full of gripe against your family, against your friends. Everybody is a son of a bee or whatever. Hey, man, you were born with a silver spoon. How many people are born with a silver spoon? So that was the connection, and that was the conversation behind everything that Mark was thinking about, and then slowly discovering who Mark is through our conversation. And I hope Mark discovered who I am, and why we joined the PPC. What we were trying to break the hold of the uni party. So everything else is secondary. Anyhow, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, and Bob, you knew Mark pretty well too, and I was talking with you at the memorial we had for Mark, and you told me some really amazing things about when you first met Mark and the experiences. It was like meeting a brother, a long lost brother that you never knew you had, and that's what it was like immediately with you, wasn't it, Bob? It was the same with me too.
Yeah, it sure was, Arby. It was kindred spirits, brothers in arms, whatever you want to call it. I was a sponge then, looking for truth, nothing but the truth. And yeah, at the beginning of COVID, I was still captured by the conservative wing of this uniparty establishment. And like I said in our last conversation, I was just looking for as much information as I could get. And it was in the fall of 2020 when it really struck home how deep this goes. And just having those conversations with Mark was reassuring that I wasn't insane, and to have his sense of humor along with it. And what I said to him was, I can't imagine being awake that long, aware that long, and having the patience and the wherewithal to be at a sort of peace with it. So I'm still working on that myself, and I know Mark had greater level of patience than I have. I've prayed for patience all my life. So Salim knows how frustrated I get, and this has been a journey. And I just, again, standing on the stage with Mark and talking to rooms full of people, and to be in that room with Mark and to see him delivering truth to everyone, and how thankful everyone was to hear it. And it was a good time. It was tough times for sure. I mean, we were divided with families and communities and friends, but we found a different kind of a family. So a lot of the people I met through that, and Mark was one of them. Mark. I'm sad to say that I kind of drifted away from a lot of people, and Mark was one of them, because I just needed to distance myself from everything, and kind of took a sabbatical. Not kind of, it took a sabbatical in a big way. Just needed to reflect. I took almost a year off, actually, and took that time to just reflect on the conversations and the meetings, and even conversations with Salim. And I appreciated an email that Salim had sent me after the Alberta general election. I was pretty disappointed. And, Salim had made a point, and it was a very good point, that I was pointing the finger squarely at these politicians that I consider to be treasonous to this day, to the life, liberty, and peace of all Canadians. But Salim corrected me, as he does. And, it's people in general. And that was the tormenting thing for me then. And it's still I don't want to call it tormenting. It disappoints me. It frustrates me to see people recaptured again. Like right now, we have this independence versus Forever Canada skirmish going on, and just to see people fall for the divide and conquer tactics of these collaborators on both sides of the political aisle. I just, that was a conversation Mark and I had at the time. I was pretty much entrenched in this idea of a referendum on independence. I saw that every province could potentially use that to open up a much needed conversation across Canada, and that Alberta could take the lead on it. That's why we did a tour in Saskatchewan, and was the reason. My reason was I felt that we needed to stand together as neighbors, as friends, and as family. And it was embraced, but it wasn't embraced by the politicians that were at my table. And not, again, naive, very naive. I'm still learning. I'll stop rambling here. Even today, I learned something new that I just added to my document here this evening. Just to refresh a course on, I know you guys know this, but the global hierarchy of these global NGOs, we can start with the world bankers, I guess, and then the technocratic oligarchs, obviously, that run all of this and control the money, that puppeteer politicians all around the world. Then the Club of Rome, I'll just go through the structure. Club of Rome, Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, United Nations, which includes the WEF and WHO, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization. So I've always been saying in my presentations, like Mark has done, that the Trilateral Commission was Mark Carney's. I know what's not his, but that's pretty much where he was entrenched in, and banking, obviously. And I always said that Stephen Harper owned the World Economic Forum. And just today I learned that the MP that took over Kenny's seat when Kenny came back to Alberta, Stephanie Kuzy, was elected in a by-election in 2017 in Calgary. And in 2018, she was appointed to the Trilateral Commission.
Really?
It's
tiny little Alberta got somebody on the Trilateral Commission, eh? I suppose it happens more often than not.
We got a few. Alberta's literally ground zero on a lot of this stuff, because if Alberta could fall, Canada's gone. And on things like the climate change, criminal fraud, I call it, the taxing of CO2.
The carbon capture scheme is so brilliant in its evil brilliance. Sell the people on the idea that CO2, which makes the planet greener, CO2, which is essential to life, and without carbon dioxide interacting, you wouldn't have oxygen. You wouldn't be able to breathe. This whole thing, they're going to capture it, put it underground and it will cost millions of dollars for all these things to capture something out of the air that needs to be in the air. It makes no sense, but they're making billions off it. It's crazy.
Well, billions off at RB, and it's also obviously a control mechanism too. But what I was going to say is, 13 years before Notley took power here, before the NDP took power in a protest vote, when the PCs and the Wild Roads merged, and I wanted to talk about that a bit, but 13 years before Notley took office and 13 years before Trudeau Jr. took office, industrial carbon taxes were started here in Alberta. And that's just on the tail end of both Mulroney and Harper bringing in the foundation for all of this in UN Sustainable Development, right? And so today, what I see, what's frustrating, is my friends and family that once were pushing back on carbon taxes are now championing carbon capture. And it's funded it's billions of dollars in Alberta already. I'll give you one example, and tens of billions across Canada, hundreds of millions in the United States. And it continues this day under Trump. But one example, the Dow expansion in Fort Saskatchewan. The Alberta government cut a check, and it was a direct check, which is debt, for $800 million, and $400 million more came from the federal government. And that was a direct check. And if it wasn't for that, I mean, Dow wouldn't do an expansion on their own, but the taxpayers are funding it. Anyways, it's just, Alberta's been ground zero on a lot of this. And what's also troubling to me is all of us that stood up through COVID-19, the World Health Organization international health regulations came under Martin's Liberals and Harper's Conservatives between 2005 and 2012. I mean, Harper put the exclamation point on it, vaccination and quarantine laws, and the reason why Canadian truckers stood up. Not many people here in the conservative circles still like to hear that Harper was involved in a lot of this stuff. It still really bothers people. So that's what I was saying earlier with this independence movement. I know a lot of people in the conservative circles that don't support that. And it's just another, to me, it's just now in hindsight, it was just a lot of political theater.
Okay. I'm going to share this about carbon capture because I find this fascinating. So while we were talking, I typed in, does China or Russia do carbon capture? Okay, so China is rapidly emerging as a global leader in carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Capacity and scale, China's capture capacity has grown dramatically with multiple large-scale integrated projects and pilots in operation and under construction. Okay, so what are they doing to capture this? Okay, China focused heavily on industrial-scale CCUS, rapidly retrofitting coal-fired power plants and heavy industry sectors. So they're saying that they're using that carbon capture to retrofit coal-fired power plants. I don't get it. Chinese facilities are scaling up quickly with state-owned enterprises building projects, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't ever actually mention if they actually use carbon capture. It just says they say they do. And in Russia, Russia relies extensively on conventional land-based carbon removal using its vast forests, which act as a massive carbon sink to meet its climate obligations rather than mechanical carbon capture facilities. Russia is using their carbon sink, their vast trees, and they're not building any of these things. And they're just saying, hey, our trees are taking care of it. We could say that here in Canada too. We have as many trees as Russia. We don't need to have anything to do with this carbon capture nonsense. It's a scam, it's a scheme. I wish people would wake up. Let's go to Sean. I want to play something, and I want your, because I think since it's about Mark, kind of, it's part 2 of the Mark show, basically. And I didn't get a chance to play this last time, but I know people will love to see it. I think the volume might not be high. People at home, so you might want to turn it up. But it's kind of a famous viral movement here in Canadian political history. When Mark Friesen walked up, talked to Pierre Poilievre about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And Pierre pretends he hasn't read it, even though, come on. I mean, he's part of the political machine there. Harper signed on to, Mulroney and Harper were both involved in signing on to these UN agreements. So he's got to know. But he also knows it's a bad political move for his base. So he pretends this is very good. Let's remember this moment. And then we'll talk about what this means for Canada, that we have basically the only party that could possibly beat Carney's Liberals is Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. But would we know the difference? Oh, hold on. Where's the...
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't have the sound on. Here.
Thanks for coming. Okay, we'll do a shot here.
I have one question.
Oh,
I have for you.
yeah.
I'd love for you to answer.
Fire away.
You've denounced the World Economic
Yes.
Forum vehemently.
Yes.
You denounced the UN Sustainable Development Agenda, the SDGs.
I haven't read it.
Pierre has actually already voted in favor of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
I don't know what it is.
You haven't read it?
No, I haven't.
That's interesting.
Do you want to do a shot?
Sure.
All right.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. I'll have to look at it.
Yes, you will.
I don't.
It's very important.
I have a simple rule. If I haven't read it, I don't comment on it.
You need to read it. It's extremely
Thank you
important.
for the good recommendation.
Absolutely.
So that was great. A good recommendation. But you notice how he set him up first with, do you denounce the World Economic Forum's stuff? Because that's popular amongst his base to do that, and everybody can get behind it. right? Because of course Pierre isn't in charge now. So anyway, but then when asked about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, he pretends that he hasn't read it, and that's it's obviously a deflection method. So let's start with Sean. The Uniparty here in Canada, doesn't matter, Conservatives, Liberals, NDP, they're all going to be going along with this UN Sustainable Agenda goals because every major political party has signed on to it right from the roots, because even their constituent parts right down to the bottom people are all getting paid. They're by this system, so they're dependent on it. They don't want to. They have vested interest in keeping things status quo. I think that's our biggest problem, Sean.
Yeah, it's the ignorance of the Canadian voter, right?
That too.
Like, we've been having this split the vote argument since 2018, and yeah, they don't know, right? It was Brian Mulroney in 1992 that signed us up for Agenda 21 with the Rio Declaration. It was Stephen Harper who signed it into law with the Sustainable Development Act in 2008. And it was Stephen Harper who signed us up again for Agenda 2030 in 2015, just before he handed the baton to Trudeau. Like, they're all pulling in the same direction. And the inability for people to see that. And when they passed Bill C-4, which basically took away parental rights for deciding the fate of their children with the transgender movement and stuff like that, when you saw them, hugging and kissing each other in the aisles, and they passed that legislation unanimously in the House of Commons, right? There is no space between these people. They work for foreign entities and supranational.
I just wanted to quickly add, Sean, and remember when the Nazi came to the Parliament, all 338 MPs gave a Nazi a standing ovation because they were told to.
Yeah, but what's a Nazi, right? just another mythical demon that we had, right? So you want to talk about Nazis and who the bad guys are?
I want to talk about at the time, because they brought him in as a sign of great resilience against the Russians, right?
Yeah.
Forgetting that the Russians were on our side during World War II.
Exactly.
It made no sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So you look at what did Adolf Hitler do when he came to power? What was the first things he did? He outlawed usury and pornography. Oh. Right? What did Justin Trudeau do? He lowered the age of consent for sodomy, legalized marijuana, and sold all our gold reserves to China. And then told the nation that we have no cultural identity and we're a post-national state. Right? Yeah. It's just like, okay, so who are the bad guys here?
Sean, when you put it that way, that gets awfully close to noticing things. Salim, I want to throw it to you.
Yeah. I'll try not to notice. We don't want to lose YouTube here.
That's right, because Salim, I just wanted to throw it to Salim because he has an idea. We can maybe talk about these people as the non-Irish. How about that, Salim?
Well, I mean, with Mark, I mean, we are remembering Mark, and it is what moved Mark, what was his passionate concerns about. About the non-Irish, I never had a chance to talk to Mark about it, and because the issue was not on the table, as I said to Sean some time ago, the issues that have come forward, that is on the table, is what we're addressing. People have to be prepared to know about those issues. So in 2023, the issue of the non-Irish became front and center in the world, not only, in the Middle East, in the world. And here we are in the age of what has happened in 2023. And why? When 1945 ended, people said never again. There was a Nuremberg trial. There was the Geneva Convention on Genocide. Canada signed it. America signed it. In fact, it was the Canadian, the Americans, the European. It was their proposition. These propositions did not come from China or India or Vietnam. or South Africa. And
I
then
just wanted
genocide happened. No, you raised the question and you let me finish.
I just wanted to quickly mention that and Romeo Dallaire in Rwanda, remember, a Canadian. There's a
Point
connection.
is, you raised the question of non-Irish, and I'm telling you, you see, we go all over the map. We don't have any consistency of where we are talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
And I don't want to spoil the argument, but it is genuine and it is important. I have spent my life in Canada. The issue of the non-Irish was never on the table in Canada during my lifetime. When I came to Canada in 73, went through university, undergraduate, graduate, doctorate, worked in Ottawa. These were not the issue on the table. So as a Canadian, though I knew about those issues, I didn't talk about those issues to anybody because those are taboo subjects. The only one taboo subject that I talked about and wrote about and published was multiculturalism, which opens up the book to all these issues. Okay, so I mean, if Romeo Dallaire was in Rwanda, the question is not about Romeo Dallaire was in Rwanda. How was he appointed? It was a United Nations operation. He was the chief of the mission, but he was not provided with the utensils, the tools to deal with the problem. Why? And so on and so forth. So whether we have the time to dig into that or whether it is about Mark. But in 2023, these were not the issue. The issue that was driving people was, as you addressed in the opening issue, was about Canada, the broken nature of our country, the constitutional issues, the Western grievances about the Constitution, going all the way back to the making of Reform Party, to which I was brought in by Preston Manning. He brought me into Reform Party personally. So those were the issues, and I was talking about those issues. All of us were talking about those issues. So it was a non-Irish issue, came around in 2023. And the last podcast I did with Mark was on October 14, 2023, 2 hours. You, my brother RB, found that podcast because it was removed from my Facebook, as so many of the things have been removed, and that's another subject. But that was the first time that Mark talked to me, and he wanted to talk to me about what was happening in the Middle East. And in those 2 hours, Mark's eyes lit up. But then after that, Mark, rapidly, descended into the state, which my brother Sean can talk about. I cannot talk about because Sean took care of him, saw him deteriorate. And I never had another conversation with him after that, But today, that is the issue that we're talking about. But it was not with Mark. It came after Mark. And if Mark was around, I think Mark would have then been on side, because the issue of genocide is at the heart of the issue of war and peace, morality, and so on. The very core values that Canada has betrayed after signing those documents.
So I've just shared the screen of that. You can go find it on YouTube yourself. Mark Friesen, Grizzly Patriot. You can still subscribe to his channel. It's still up there. And you can watch this yourself there. Mark's last interview with Salim. And the title of it is Salim joins us to speak about the bankers' war in the Middle East. So you had that was your last show with Mark. So I think that's kind of important because I think that you're right. He would have seen through this pretty easily what's going on at this point, because it's still all about it's a bankers' war, right? There's that famous YouTube video. So I wanted Bob to talk. Maybe Bob, could you maybe talk about about the idea of a bankers' war, banksters running everything.
Well,
and
let's put this in context.
Our prime minister is one of them now. We've now got a bankster for a prime minister.
Well, let's put it in this context of what Mark, because it is about Mark we're talking about. That's his subtitle, or rather title. It is his theme. So, why did he put it in those terms? Well, I can you know, speculate on that, because between 2022, February of 2022, when the special military operation began in Ukraine, with Russian military going in to defend the Russian speaking people in those oblasts of Donetsk and Lugansk, which was being bombarded by the Nazis in Ukraine. That is the Stephen Bandera gang, the Azov battalion, and so on and so forth. And again, the finer details, few of us would have studied it or know about it. I'm sure Sean is right on top of this, issue, and possibly Bob, because there in the West is the bulk of the Ukrainian population, and Mark had family with the Ukrainian, people. Kevin Boychuk, for instance, he started calling me after that, after listening to our conversation. So for a year and a half, Mark discussed the Ukraine war with me in all of its different, uh, makeup. And I was arguing the historical point, the rightness of the issue, whereas the entire country, that is, I'm not talking about us, the entire country was on the other side. What was the justification for the entire country to be on the other side in defense of Ukraine that was being used as an instrument to break up Russia, to bring a color revolution, to disembowel Russia, seize its resources, partition it, and so on and so forth. Extortion, extraction. Russia is one of the richest, land and country in the world. So that was the discussion, the bankers' war. The bankers have been funding on all sides of the issue for their own interests. So that was the title. But I took him on the journey in this last conversation on the historical issues in the Middle East, the making of Israel. What is the basis of it? What are their claims? Why is there support for them? Why are the Canadians so obtuse about understanding what is happening? The Christian Zionists, and so on and so forth. That was the first and the last conversation I had with him. You know how deep and divisive this issue is in this country. Whereas my position has been, as a Canadian, not as a Muslim, not as some Indian or something else, as a Canadian, not a hyphenated Canadian. What is Canada's identity that has been basically lacerated over the last 10 years? And no politician, no leader stands up and speak about Canadian position. What is Canadian position? Since 1945, Canada has tried to walk the path of bringing diverse political position into a conversation and understanding, for which ultimately the Nobel Prize was given to Lester Pearson. It was not simply the making of peacekeeping forces. It is that essential role as the middle power to bring about the two sides. And why? Because Canada is a founding member of the United Nations. Why? Because Canada has been a lead actor in the proposing and signing and leading the treaties and agreements, such as, the laws of the Sea Conference. Canada has been an extremely important player in that. So the role of Canada, which then becomes identified as peacekeeping, peacemaking, a country that is respected around the world, that Canada can bridge the gap, has been totally abandoned. Why? Those are relevant questions. Nobody talks about it. You see, that was my position, that Canada doesn't want to take side. That's a domestic issue. The Jewish lobby is the strongest lobby. We all know that. We can see that what's happening in America. And the political leadership in Canada, nobody will be able to take on the Jewish lobby because they are all at the pay of the Jewish lobby. So, but it is not it is we the people. We are not, as Carlin says, the club is a very big club, but you are not in it. The Canadian people are not in it. But if you ask the Canadian people, and Canada is a changing country because of its immigration policy, its multiculturalism policy, then the majority of the Canadian people would reject where the political elite is standing. We would ask, that our politician stand with the majority of the people in the world against the genocide, against all the resolution that is hanging over Israel, that Israel with impunity has violated. The same thing applies to the Ukraine war, because the rest of the world knows that in 1962, what happened in Cuba is exactly now being played out in Ukraine. Why? Because when the Russia and the Soviets planted the missiles in Cuba, not getting into any pro or con about that, just the event, that Russia, to defend the Cuban Revolution, came forward and was going to put the missiles in Cuba, 90 miles from the heartland of America. What happened? We all know the Cuban Missile Crisis. The world went to the tip of a nuclear confrontation. But thank God for John F. Kennedy, who, worked out with Khrushchev the resolution of that peacefully. And so after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Western leaders agreed that the NATO forces will not advance 1 centimeter east of East Germany, east of Berlin. That was the basis of the unification of Germany. Canada was there. And then what happens? The NATO force border started expanding all the way to the doorstep of Russia. Russia said, no, this cannot happen. So where were the Canadian people? Where were the Canadian politicians? Where was the Canadian leadership? That was the conversation I was having with Mark on the international issues.
Okay, and Bob, I want you to quickly talk about this issue of our sovereignty, because we at one point after World War II, for a while, Canada was very strong. We had a good, strong Navy and Army. We partook in the World War II. We were on the winning side. We thought we'd done a great job. We had a good, booming middle class. But then something happened, and we lost our ability to defend our own sovereignty in almost every way possible, and it's been hollowing out from the inside. So that's what this is all about. The People's Party of Canada is all about sovereignty, right? We need to save our frickin' country, not just nationally, really, but individually too. Individual sovereignty, bodily autonomy. What happened to us during COVID, that goes along with it. When we just become slaves to a colonial system, we start. That's the loss of our sovereignty. Did we even ever have it though, Bob? Have we always just been the king's toy, a resource colony for the Anglo-American Empire, and we've just been fooling ourselves?
Yeah, I would suggest we've never been liberated. We were always captured. I was, like everyone else, calling it out as communism. When the Native Indians back in the day in Canada were captured and were put in these communities, and I was calling it communism. But just recently I realized that was kind of the wrong term. Feudalism, under the rule of kings and queens, or the new kings of the day and queens of the day, the technocrats, whatever. No, Canada was not founded on freedom, not even close. Like all other British Commonwealth countries, the people of the land were captured. Collaborators were used of the people of the land, Native Indians, of European settlers. So you had two sides there, right? You had a very small group that was pushing back. They're like, hey, we just came here. We just got here. We're kind of liking this freedom. And now these parasites are here again. And the same thing happened again. I got so much to say. I mean, this is a great conversation, but it's so dynamic. And, you mentioned wars, the bankers' wars. All wars are bankers' wars. All of them. the Rothschilds are one of these families we can see, and there's other families we can't see. But these are the wealthy, most influential families in the world. And Rothschilds is a good example. So they were making money off of wars all the way back to the Napoleonic Wars. They were funding bankrupt kings. So there's always these players behind the shadows that are coming to these lands and reaping the money and the power, and they set up this infrastructure. And you got the Rothschilds that set up the state of Israel. And there's a conversation where I got to calm down because I got to say something. I wanted to open with this. I'm just going to take a second. Mark was like me and like you guys. We found our voice and our passion because we care about other people, even other people we don't know. We care about children. We care about men and women. We care about these people that are being murdered many different ways all around the world, that are being abused, that are being enslaved at an even deeper level. And that's what I saw in Mark too, his compassion for other people. I shared a link in the chat here to a Facebook post I made where Mark gave a speech in 2019 at the Yellow Vest convoy to Ottawa. He had a big heart. And, you know, it took me a while to wrap my head around the reality that mankind all around the world are equal in that we are all captured and we are all under the thumb of these different players, different actors, these oligarchs, the new kings of the day. There's children in America and all around the world that are raped by the billionaire class, by the politicians. And none of these people have been prosecuted as of yet. And that happens in Alberta, and that happens across Canada. That happens all over the world. The genocide of the people of Gaza was an abomination. And I agree, Salim, and I stood there. And there's no freedom of speech in this country, and that freedom of speech is censored not only by the state, but by friends and neighbors who stop men and women who care from calling evil, evil. There's politicians that refuse to talk about genocide around the world. And with all due respect, Maxime was one of them. Maxime was another politician that I reached out through for the sexual predation of children here in Alberta that is going on today. And he turned his back. So I see no good guy governments. I see no good guy politicians anywhere around the world. All I see is either people playing it safe, men and women playing it safe, or they're taking their silver in different ways. And that is my litmus test for anybody. If you can't call evil, evil, you're off the mark. And so that's what I respected about Mark. He was right there. And, you know, so that conversation about Gaza and the state of Israel and the U.S. military industrial complex, that genocide, I lost a lot of friends, and there's a lot of influencers that were on the wrong side of that. And it's no different than COVID-19. For anyone that's on the wrong side of that, there needs to be words coming out of their mouth saying, you know what? I apologize. I was on the wrong side of that history. Let me clear the air there and let's move on. That's unity. That's the only unity that will ever make change. So I gotta take a minute. I get really amped up, and this is why I need to take a break. I need it to, because I get so fired up when people come to me and play politics and want to play it safe. You got freedom fighters in Alberta here, influencers, that are now shilling for this Alberta government that has never paid any retribution, that never answered any of their crimes against humanity through COVID-19. And now they're licking their boots again. And I see them. I know what they're doing. They're taking payment. I'll stop there.
I was going to ask Sean, I know you did talk to Mark about these issues. I know you did. And I want you to talk now about us. Because I talked with Mark about these issues too. And I don't want to say what he would told me before I want your testament. Because you did talk about Mark about this issue. And I would like everybody to hear what you thought he knew about what was going on, because sometimes his public persona wasn't all what we saw his private persona, and he was far more open to these ideas. I talked to him about 9/11 all the time, conspiracy theory stuff. He didn't come right out and say, yeah, it sounds like it. He always considered it. He said, you've got a point there. So what do you think, Sean? It's okay. I think we need to know.
Yeah. No, we of course we talked about these things. And Mark had a way, like I said, he was always on mission, right?
Yeah.
We were on mission. You look at this thing, that thing with Pierre Poilievre and the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum is what actually was, people noticed the World Economic Forum, right? There are thousands of these institutions. Yeah, Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberger Group, the Council for Foreign Relations. Like, there is just, when you look at the org chart of all these non-governmental organizations and the web they weave, like, it's absolutely insane. It's too big for the human mind. This war that we're in is too big for the human mind, right? It is being waged on 10,000 fronts. And you see these things, and it's just like, well, they seem like disparate issues, right? Like carbon capture versus the Soji 123 in the schools versus the chemtrails versus right? Like all these things that are completely, they look like they're different issues. It's all the same issue, right? And that's what, that's the hard part, trying to convey this message. And Mark and I were of the same belief that armed with the correct information, that people would recognize the threats that exist and it would shake them out of their complacency. Were we wrong? Maybe. I don't know. Like I'm talking to, 3 guys in this room with me right now who've all been in the trenches doing the same thing. Right. And it was different noticings that brought us here. Right. I was a paramedic. I was a firefighter. I spent 16 years as an emergency nurse before I was fired for my mouth. I spent 20 years in the Canadian military before I was kicked out for my mouth. Right? I'm a sheepdog. I've always wanted to take care of Canadians, and I've been blessed in my life that I was able to have careers that allowed me to do that. Right? And the inability for people to recognize when people are advocating for them and the demonization that occurs, it astounds me. Right? Like, I don't know if you guys have ever been gopher hunting, right? Bob, you're an Albertan, so I'm sure you have. But, right, you're out in the gopher field, and a hawk flies over. And as soon as a gopher sees that shadow, they let out that alarm squeal, right? And you see collectively every gopher crouches down, looks around, and they either go scurry to their hole or gets the all clear, right? What happens when the entire gopher town says, you're an asshole, hawks are a conspiracy theory? And that's effectively what we saw happen during COVID-19, right? I spoke about what was happening in the hospitals. I come from a psychological operations background in the military. I know the deceptive tactics that they use within the media and things like that. And I saw them. They were lying about everything. And I tried to warn people. So for average Joe public to see, okay, this guy's dedicated his life to serving his country, his community, and he's warned us about things that the government was lying about a few years ago, which everyone kind of knows now, right? Like, the cat's out of the bag. They fucking lied about everything, right? And you don't have to be in our crowd to be the only ones to recognize that. Like, it's pretty much admitted, right? Health Canada, the admissions that Health Canada has made about what transpired during COVID-19, what transpired with the vaccines, it's on the record. Like, it's out there in public, for public view. Yet the few of us that actually stood up and tried to warn people are still hated.
And
right?
punished.
I just finished. Yeah, I think we might have talked about this. I just finished my disciplinary here. It's still not done. I'm just still waiting. They're trying to find me a whole bunch more money, right? But for the last 6 years, I have been dragged through this disciplinary process, right? I've been slandered in the media. They call me a hateful person. They call me a conspiracy theorist, an anti-vaxxer, all these things, right? For just trying to warn people that is on public record now as being true. If the further your society moves away from truth, the more it will hammer those that speak it, right? And you don't have to there's so few people that are out there going hard in the paint and speaking truth to power, that we need to support the ones who are, and Mark and I, because we thought, right, if we present enough information to people and they come to the conclusions that we have, we'll make progress. How much progress? I don't know. You look at where we're at. You look at, you talk about these things in Agenda 2030, and that was Mark's, right? That was Mark's bread and butter, Agenda 2030, and he'd go all the way back. Frankfurt School, Fabian Society, British Roundtable Movement, Club of Rome, all that stuff, right? And you look at the ideology of this mess, this latest iteration, anyways. They perfected slavery, right? Fractional reserve banking and fiat currency is the perfection of slavery. People have been convinced to trade their time and effort and energies for paper that these people print out of thin air, right? And they reward people to sell out their nations for this paper. And it was working. It was working pretty good, right? I did it. I chased money all my life. I did these things. But that wasn't enough, right? We've got too many people in the world now. And this has been written down in their books. I think it was Idealismus Practitioner, written by Anton Kalergi in 23. He was League of Nations guy, Christian Zionist, one of the founding members of the, his buddy, of the UN, wrote a lot of the founding documents for the UN, right? And they said, this is how we're going to destroy Western civilization, is with mass immigration from sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, Southern Asia, right? And we will use racial tensions. Well, we seem to be in the final stage of that operation, right? You look around Canada, it's gone on through some pretty, and not just Canada, all the Western nations, right? So
I wanted to play this because this is Mark would always tons of times he played this and he would talk about it and he was quite earnest about it. And this is Dennis Meadows, how the population must be reduced to 1 to 2 billion, achieved by epidemics, well, or war or anything.
We are so far, globally, we are so far above the population and the consumption levels which can be supported by this planet that I know in one way or another it's going to come back down. So I don't hope to avoid that. I hope that it can occur in a civil way, and I mean civil in a special way, peaceful. Peace doesn't mean that everybody's happy, but it means that conflict isn't solved through violence, through force, but rather in other ways. And so that's what I hope for. That we can, I mean, the planet can support something like 1 billion people, maybe 2 billion, depending on how much liberty and how much material consumption you want to have. If you want more liberty and more consumption, you have to have fewer people. And conversely, you can have more people. I mean, we could even have 8 or 9 billion probably if we have a very strong dictatorship, which is smart. It's unfortunately, you never have smart dictatorships. They're always stupid. So, but if you had a smart dictatorship and a low standard of living, you can have it. But we want to have freedom and we want to have a high sentence. So we're going to have 1 billion people. And we're now at 7, so we have to get back down. I hope that this can be slow, relatively slow, and that it can be done in a way which is relatively equal, so that people share the experience and you don't have a few rich, trying to force everybody else to deal with it. So those are my hopes. I mean, these are pretty pessimistic hopes, but I mean, that's what lies ahead.
A co-founding member of the Club of Rome and co-author of Limits to Growth, the granddaddy of them all. The depopulation agenda right in front of our face, and so they're implementing it.
I would argue that that they're very effective, right?
Yeah.
And you look at where we are right now. So we've just, COVID-19, we're experiencing 100% increase of cancers across the board, increase in sudden cardiac death, increase in neurodegenerative disorders. We are in a healthcare crisis in this country. And currently, Canada is undergoing the largest military mobilization since World War II, right? The Department of National Defense has issued tendered contracts for hundreds of thousands of new assault rifles, right? They want to bring the regular force up to, I think it's 100,000, the reserves up to 100,000, and a supplemental reserve of 300,000, right? And they're doing this by issuing PR cards to all the fighting age males that we've brought into our country, right? So how effective this is going to be remains to be seen, because as it looks right now, they're having ethnic clashes within the courses, basic military training and things like that. And the attrition rates are well over 50% and quite high. But this should alarm everyone, because we've seen what's happened to our trusted federal institutions in healthcare, in policing, and in military. And what they've done effectively is remove people of integrity from those institutions. And now they're filling it up with, the third world. this doesn't go well for host nations, right? Like this is ain't like they've been doing this for a very, very long time. And back in the day, so when you had a cohort of young men with no hope of financial or social advancement, poor mate selection, right? Those cohorts are problematic and they burn nations to the ground. So historically, we've sent them to the edge of empire, to fight the barbarian hordes and get murdered out there, so they don't tip over the apple cart. Or you bring in different people groups and create ethnic tensions domestically. And that's ultimately what they're doing, right? So when Dennis Meadows talks about I hope we can do this peacefully in a non-violent way, right? I would argue that they're being very effective, and this non-violent way, it's atypical violence. So you look at what these vaccines and COVID-19 mandates have done. They've killed more Canadians than all the wars that we've been in the history of our nation. All right. The amount of money printing that occurred during COVID will kill the amount of poverty that will create will kill more Canadians than all the wars that we've been in combined. But because this violence is atypical and it's a subversive, sneaky kind of violence, people don't seem to be noticing it. Right. And they're so captured by these accepted forms of authority that tell them, no, everything's fine. This is perfect. Right? These people show us who they are. You don't have to be a theologian to watch the opening ceremonies of the Olympics or the Super Bowl show or the Academy Awards or the Emmys and see all these satanic rituals. Like, they're pretty on the nose at this point. And they have told us that they are going to reduce the world's population by a significant amount, right? And even back, you go 100 years ago when these books were written on how they're going to take down the West with mass immigration, with racial tensions and stuff. It's just like, we want a Negroid Eurasian race with an IQ in the low 80s that will, manage the machines and be able to do all those things. They've made such leaps and technological bounds in AI and robotics now. They don't need that service race either. Right? And you listen to these people, all these thought leaders like Noble Harari for the World Economic Forum, Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, like Salim was talking about earlier, right? They're all on message, and they're all saying the same thing, right? We don't need people, and we need to liquidate them, and they are.
Elon Musk said something about a universal basic income, but he said it'd be really a rich one. He's trying to mull it. He's trying to make everybody just settle down. Yeah, you're all going to have to get UBI and become slaves, but I'll make sure I'm Elon Musk. I'm promising you it'll be livable.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're outright saying it. So, and the universal basic income thing can happen because what if with the craziness going on in the Middle East, and the Ukraine-Russia war that never seems to end, and all the, global economic problems all of a sudden coming out of nowhere, I've noticing prices just going off the shelf. Chocolate's almost too expensive to eat now. It's crazy. You can see it happening. The gas prices, if they collapse the dollar because of this craziness, whatever's going to happen in Iran, which I think Salim kind of knows what's coming. This is the collapse of the Western system. Like, this is the end of the global North. The global South is rising. We're done.
You guys were talking about the Gaza genocide before.
Yeah.
Right? What is Mossad's motto?
By deception, so shall thou wage war.
Thou shalt wage war. Has there been anything deceptive about this?
No.
They have been conducting a genocide in 4K, posting it on social media, and bragging about it. Right? So if you go back to the plans from a century ago, right? How we're going to foment these wars. Bill Cooper laid it all out in the 90s, right? Israel was a creation of the powers that be, and it will be the catalyst for the war to end all wars, where people beg for a one world government to make the fighting stop. Right? That's not how these people wage war. The people wage wars by infiltrating your economic, your educational institutions, using pornography, drugs. That's how these people wage war. They subvert, poison, and destroy your culture. They don't do it with bombs. They do it with bombs when they're putting on a show to incite hatred. This is yeah.
Well, and the wars aren't meant to be won; they're meant to be continuous. Though you have to give it. They got to keep the military-industrial complex oiled. So there's always something going on somewhere. Bankers' wars, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Salim, you want to say something, and then I guess we should maybe tap out. We've been here an hour and 16 minutes. You guys want to keep going on a little longer, or?
No, I mean, all of these, as Sean has said, and I might only repeat it, these are all interconnected. These have all been known, those who have studied this matter. I have done my due diligence, but not enough of it. But I have done it, But one has to talk about this thing when the audience is somewhat ready to be receptive about it. Otherwise, as Sean has just said, they will take you out. The very audience that you're trying to save will take you out. Forget about the Gestapo coming in. So this is it. I mean, what we are going through. But coming back to the non-Irish that you asked, and what Sean has just now pointed out, first the people have to become a captive mind. The captive mind. So in Soviet Union, the Bolshevik Revolution, which was the other part of it, nobody wants to talk about it, was a Jewish Bolshevik Revolution. Leon Trotsky was a non-Irish. 60% of the Politburo were non-Irish. The Central Committee, more than half was non-Irish. And what did they do, these non-Irish? They wiped out the Tsar's family, and they wiped out 60 million people in Russia. They created the famine, Holodomor, in Ukraine. That crash, was a disaster before the Second World War even began. But are these things talked about in our universities, in our colleges, in our schools? No. You see, it's never discussed. And if you want to discuss it, it will be, taboo. So the non-Irish operation goes a long way back. But the irony is the non-Irish operation did not begin with the non-Irish. It began with the Irish. In other words, it didn't begin with the Jews, it began with the Christians. One has to go all the way back to the Reformation. One has to go all the way back to what happened is what in English history is called the Glorious Revolution, the 17th century. The execution of King Charles I by Cromwell. Who was Cromwell? What existed in England before Cromwell came to power? That in 1290, King Edward I, the grandson of Richard the Lionheart, expelled the non-Irish from England, 1290. That was almost 200 years before the expulsion from Spain. And then over 450 years later, Cromwell brought them back into England. The Protestant Revolution, the Puritans, they brought them back to England. Why? Because they needed the money to carry on the civil war in England, the Glorious Revolution that is called, in which the last Catholic king was decapitated, Charles I. Because after Henry VIII, when the Catholic Church was taken away by Henry for his own needs and his own reasons. Um, he needed the money. So he seized the property of the Catholic Church, killed people like Sir Thomas More, etc., etc. And then they wanted to ethnic cleanse the Catholics. But he died. I don't know how many of you know the story of Mary, Queen of Scots, the last Catholic princess who became the queen, Scottish, married to the French Dauphin, um, had to fight a war, and that war was in Elizabeth I came out victorious, and Elizabeth the First, the great queen, under her reign, Protestant Church grew, and finally, in this glorious revolution, they decapitated Charles I in 1649 and brought in the Jews and the bankers from Amsterdam into England to finance it. So this is a long story, complex story, but it is from within this group emerged the argument that the Jews, they still are the covenant people, because the Protestant now needed an authority to understand their own religion, having destroyed the Catholic Church. So who and what would be the authority? And the authority becomes the Old Testament. For 1600 years, the authority was the Vatican, and Jews were the Christ killers. But now the Protestant, John Calvin, Martin Luther recanted later on by writing his book on the Jews, but John Calvin was a completely crypto-Jew. And so they are the covenant people. It is the Christian who were the olive tree grafted on to the original olive tree, that is the Jews. That is Paul's view of history from the Old Testament. So the Old Testament become, and if you go to Protestant churches, you see that the reference points in every discussion is the Old Testament. Is Ezekiel said such and such, Isaiah said such and such thing, and so on and so forth. Whereas Jesus is the new covenant. And so the Jews are rehabilitated. One of the finest books on the subject is written by Barbara Tuchman, a Jewish American historian, called The Bible and the Sword. Is the story of England. At the heart of all of this, because it is in England this idea emerges, and the Puritan who come to America, the Mayflower kids, people, they see America as the new Israel. And
I think they called it the New Jerusalem, wasn't it? The New Jerusalem.
Well, New Israel, New Jerusalem,
Yeah.
the city on this, the shining city on the hill, John Winthrop, and so on and so forth. This is the Puritan ideas. This is the storyline, and so the question of helping the Jews. What is this? I can't. Tommy Douglas. Okay, yeah, all of
The
these.
road to Jerusalem. He
Yeah.
believed in that idea too.
That's right. Well, New Israel is New Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And it is out of there. One of the first leader in the 18th century, early 18th century, before John Nelson Darby, was Earl of Shaftesbury, the first Earl of Shaftesbury, who devoted his life to bringing the Jews together so that they could then be taken to Palestine and planted there, so that it would speed up the coming of the second Messiah. But for the Jews, the Messiah's Moshiach is from their own family, own tribe. But for the Christian, it was Jesus. And that's the theology that is constructed, that comes down as Christian Zionism. And it is the theology that is behind the Balfour Declaration by the leaders in the Second World War. They need the bankers' money, and they're going to, give in return to the bankers Palestine and the claim of 3,000-year-old history, when none of these Jews, or European Jews, are the original Hebrews or the Israelites. They're all Khazarian Jews, of Turkish origin, that converted to Judaism in the 7th century, 6th and 7th century. Again, these histories are not taught and nobody is allowed to touch it. And if one publicly discusses it, one first of all becomes an anti-Semite. You're branded. I have been already branded. You know that. And the Muslim branded me as an apostate because I questioned their politics. And now the Jews have branded me as an anti-Semite. And the Christian people alongside with them. So this whole operation is an operation of the Anglo-American. The Chinese are not interested in this story. The Indians are not interested in this story. The Burmese are not interested in this story. That is, 7, 8 of the world, 8 billion people, 7 billion people are not interested. They're not, they don't follow this story. They're not interested in it. They're interested in legal and lawful manner. And so the delegitimization of the United Nations, the very institution that was used by President Truman and others to create the State of Israel, once the State of Israel was created, the delegitimation began. Because the same United Nations that established, that partitioned Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state, then, as a result of the war, a war that was not begun by the Arabs, they were trying to defend the land that was being taken away from them. And so the war that began was a war of ethnic cleansing. If you know the name Count Folk Bernadotte, I'm sure you know, RB. Count Folk Bernadotte were the special representatives sent by the United Nations to investigate what was happening in 1948-49 in Palestine. The moment he got down from the plane, he was killed, assassinated. Assassination is the oldest method of the non-Irish to deal with problems. And projection. They are terrorists, but they will call others terrorists. So the people who assassinated Count Folk Bernadotte were the Stern Gang. Menachem Begin and Yitzhak Shamir, who later on become prime ministers of Israel. The other one who blew up the King David Hotel, which was the headquarters of the British administration in Palestine, in Jerusalem, and so on and so forth. So the delegitimization of United Nations began, but it's a long process. They had to work at it. So when John F. Kennedy said the Palestinian refugees have the right of return, among other things that he wanted to know what the Israelis were doing with their nuclear policy, making a secret bomb in the Dimona project, which we all now know, stolen the information from the Americans. When he wanted that investigated, he was killed. Who was Jack Ruby? Jacob Rubenstein was Jack Ruby. Who was Meyer Lansky? And so on and so forth. So all of these stories are there, documented, but hidden from the people, right? So now, if you want just one or two, again, connecting the data point, Donald Trump is surrounded by them. This is the Epstein class. He appointed last month the chairman of the Federal Reserve, a man by the name of Kevin Warsh, who is the son-in-law of Ronald Lauder. Ronald Lauder is the owner of the Estee Lauder billion-dollar cosmetic industry and the president of the World Jewish Organization, right? His son-in-law, he appoints him as the Federal Reserve chair. On and on and on. You can put your finger and see what has happened. You see? So the one institution that the people of the world can go to and lay down their demands and claim and hope to have a proper investigation and litigation, whether it happens or not is another matter. But the only institution is the United Nations. And that has been totally delegitimized. That there's only the collective West, and particularly America and Israel, are the one that wants to destroy the United Nations. That is to destroy the record of the last 80 years and all the resolutions, all the agreements, all the conventions. And so, coming back to Mark, this was my discussion with Mark. Mark had coined a very fine way to have access to the captive minds of Canadians that he was meeting and addressing. And that was nationalism good, globalism bad. Perfect.
Yeah, that's a
But
good
then
way.
what is nationalism? That is the second step.
Yeah.
What is it? Nationalism is an idea, but an idea that creates a country, has a core value, the people who have a shared common interest in terms of religion, language, ethnicity, what have you, and you come together and you create an entity, a state, and that state is then sovereign and it refers to the people. And the very first articulation in the making of modern history, 1776, the American Revolution, is the first articulation of the idea of a nation state, we the people. 80 years later, and I've written about this, and I had a back and forth with the last remaining premier who signed the Constitution. That is his proud signature. You know who I'm talking about, Brian Peckford, and so on and so forth. And the whole issue
Can I
came.
can I
This is the
interject?
paper that I wrote, and Mark and I discussed it extensively. So one of the quotation in that paper that was about the Constitution, because that's another huge subject matter. What we in Canada have is a charade. We are not an independent sovereign state. We have never been from its very formation, from its very foundation. So here is the quote, the priceless quote, which not too many people know, and those who know, they don't discuss it. That is, after the making, following 1841 Union Act, which made Upper Canada and Lower Canada the province of Canada. That is, Upper Canada was Ontario, Lower Canada was Quebec. After the rebellion of 1837, 1838, the British sent to British North America, which is Canada, Lord Durham as Governor General, and to report back what is the problem in Canada, because it had to be violently put down, the rebellion. And the priceless sentence in that Durham report, and I'm sure all of you know that, is Durham reporting to London that the main thing he found in Canada was there are two warring nations in the bosom of one single state. Who are the two warring nations? The French and the English. And so the solution had to be found for that. And the solution at that time that was found was the Union Act, the creation of province of Canada. So the province of Canada then, 20 years later, after the American Civil War had come to an end, desperately wanted to create a country so that they would not be overrun by America. They were so scared about it. How many of you know that Montreal was a city from where the Confederacy were being financed? Again, bankers' war. The Confederacy, that is the southern state, the slave states, were being financed. And John Wilkes Booth, he was one of the many, but who came from Montreal, sent from Montreal, who was the assassin of Abraham Lincoln. Right? So they were scared to death that the Americans, now that the Civil War is over, might take action. So they wanted to create very rapidly a, a state, a dominion of the British. And the men who were sent by Sir Johnny Macdonald and company from the province of Canada was led by Sir Alexander Galt, who was the treasurer, and a number of other people. And the petition that they carried, that was presented to the crown in England, was and contained this priceless sentence in which um, Etienne Cartier, who was the partner of Sir Johnny Macdonald. Cartier represented Lower Canada, Johnny Macdonald represented Upper Canada, and Alexander Galt and John Ross. They were the ones who prepared this petition for the crown. And in this petition, they wrote, and I'll just read one sentence because that is the pearl in the oyster. It will be observed that the basis of confederation now proposed, that is, the province of Canada is proposing for the British to act upon, now proposed, differs from that of the United States in several important particulars. It does not profess to be derived from the people, but would be the constitution provided by the imperial parliament. Shall I read it out to you again?
Yeah.
It will be observed that the basis of the confederation, that is the BNA Act 1867, that the crown prepared and sent to Canada. It will be observed that the basis of the confederation now proposed differs from that of the United States in several important particulars. It does not profess, it will not be one derived from the people, but would be the constitution provided by the imperial parliament, hence imposed. Canada would be a vassal because the American Constitution was won by the people by liberating themselves from the crown. That was the War of Independence. And all of you should be familiar with the American Constitution and then Declaration of Independence. And it all boils down what I pointed out, the 7 critical words derived from the will of the people. In the Canadian Constitution, there is no reference to the people. Who are the people? There's none. It will be one that will be imposed by the crown, and the delegates of the crown will manage the affairs. And that is what we saw with the Freedom Convoy. We saw that in 1972 with the War Measures Act, and then we saw that in 2000, when was it? 23, I think. My memory, I'm getting old. Whatever it was when the Emergency Act, which was the act, the term was changed from War Measures to Emergency Act, was imposed by Justin Trudeau. Despite all the claims of the Charter of Freedom and so on and so forth, there was no reference.
The charter's a joke, and Bob, that's why Alberta wants to be independent. What do you think the chances are? Before I guess we'll go around one more, and we'll talk about that idea because that sets it up. Because guess what? Mark Friesen was fully one of these people at the end of his life. He came to the very first Saskatchewan Prosperity Project meeting after the last election. He showed up even though he wasn't altogether there. Even at that point, we could see there was a problem. Like, for instance, when he got to the park, he went over to the Memorial where we always used to gather, and there were some Indians playing some native people playing some drums, really, really cool too, right? So he went there and sat over there and watched it for the first 5 or 10 minutes, and his wife had to go get him because that's the way he was at the end. But he was there at the end saying, I want independence. He was a big time independence guy. He was if it wasn't for the Reform Party, he said, if it wasn't for the Reform Party, he would have gone full Wexit, right? he gave it one more time a chance. And then with Maxime Bernier and the PPC, when he started that party and he did this speech in Lloyd that he took Sean to, he said, we're going to give the PPC a chance, right? He fully went into it too. He tried to change things. So, I mean, Bob, before we sign out, what's your last thoughts about Mark? And yeah, like, it's really hard to, I know you were really down on the idea, but we can't vote our way out of it. Can we actually become an independent country and get the hell out of this hellhole, have an actual republic with no crown at all? Like it says, like, governance of the people, by the people, for the people. We don't have that, so we have to grab it. We have to have a revolution in this country. Why not in Alberta and Saskatchewan join in, or do you think there's too many obstacles in the way before?
Well, first, RB, I just wanted to, there was one Zoom meeting where what Salim was just talking about. He had a very passionate debate with Brian Peckford, and Mark and I kind of sat back with big smiles on our faces and watching. It was something else, but they went head to head. So what I see in the political arena, guys, is subversion and collaborators that come in and take over grassroots movements. And the Alberta Prosperity Project, I was one of the 12 co-founders. I was the president. My wife and I were the original benefactors. And at that time, I saw the coming together of left and right in Alberta when we traveled the province. We had, anywhere from 200 to 1,200 people come out to the meetings. And then I left and went to the Independence Party. And then the Alberta Prosperity Project was turned into a vessel, a campaign machine for the United Conservative Government. At the beginning of the forming of Alberta Prosperity Project, I was called had a phone call from Chris Scott. And Chris had been speaking on our stage. And he called me and he asked me if I would consider bringing David Parker into the organization. And by that time, I understood very well what the Uniparty was all about. And I did my own research and due diligence on top of what Mark had filled me in on. And I saw David Parker as a very nefarious actor when it comes to defending the right side of the establishment. David Parker was recruited at the age of 14. He worked directly under Harper. And there was moments in time when Parker was sent back to Alberta. One such moment was to ensure that Daniel Smith was elected as leader of the Wildrose. So he was sent to Alberta, then back to Harper, and then back to Alberta to ensure that the Wildrose and the PC merger was solidified. Cam Davies was part of that. Cam Davies was another long time behind the scenes political operative. Cameron is now the leader of the Republican Party of Alberta. And then Parker, his last federal campaign was Erin O'Toole's Take Back Canada campaign. And then Parker was sent back to Alberta another time, and that was to start the Take Back Alberta organization. So I said no to Chris, and what I said to him was, if this is our fork in the road, no problem, no hard feelings, but it's a no from me. The next morning, I had a call from Dennis Modre, who was the CEO of the organization, and he asked if I would meet with David Parker, and I did. And I recorded that one, and I learned a lot in that conversation. I learned who pulls the strings of the premier in Alberta, and it's oil tycoons is who it is. And that shocked me, but anyways. Then he told me about the structure, or told us about the structure of Take Back Alberta, that there'd be these super organizers, and they're called captains. And he said, and he was very passionate about defending the United Conservative Party, pounded the table at one time. And Mitch Silvestri is the United Conservative Party's biggest fundraiser to date, their biggest recruiter. He was trained by David Parker. He was one of their captains. And what I see now, RB, is a captured independence movement right from the get-go, captured when I left the Alberta Prosperity Project. And David Parker was sent to Saskatchewan also to help organize there. Okay. So now my point is, collaborators are very good at their job. Very, very good. I give Parker credit. He's very good at what he does. And the problem that I saw also in the political arena with the Independence Party was infiltration also. We had a very big movement underway, a lot of a groundswell of grassroots. And in that organization, we also had like upwards of 500 people coming out. Even in Edmonton, we had 400 people. And again, it was people that would never, ever support something like that. But because it was grassroots, it was very powerful. And then it was taken out. 90 days before the Alberta general election, Arthur's membership was revoked. And that was it. That was all. So internal war, some of those same people that did that are now leaders of this independence movement in Alberta. Vicky Bayford, Chris Scott he wasn't part of the Independence Party, but he was pouring cold water on it. He was defending the UCP. He was defending everything they did through COVID-19. What I see is nothing but political theater, RB. I see good, honest, grassroots Albertans that were conned into believing that there was going to be a vote this fall on a referendum on independence. Now what is it? It's a vote to see if they want a referendum. It's a bunch of nonsense. So the money, you guys know the money behind politics. There's people, the technocrats, the billionaire class, they don't want anything to change. I sat down with two very, very wealthy Albertans in my walk through that. One in Northern Alberta, one in Southern Alberta, one in oil and gas, one in agriculture. And they both said to me they know what's going on, but they're supporting the status quo. So RB, I would be right there if I saw a grassroots-led movement, but that's not what happens, right? And then, again, like I can't say enough. Just today I had a conversation with somebody. People get upset with me when I drop names. And I'm like, too bad, suck it up. This is war.
You got to tell the truth.
Lay it out there.
Yeah.
And there's too many people that would rather have somebody else be up on that stage, right? And like it was never me to be up there with a mic. But again, it was my passion for people being hurt that led me to that. And I have no regrets in doing anything I've done. I've never taken anything for it. I learned a lot. It's an education that no university could give. And it was money well spent. And I met a lot of great people. Don't get me wrong. There's, again, a lot of great people, but I will call out collaborators as I see them.
I'm getting a text from a guy you were talking about earlier, Bob Blayone, a guy who was also a former correction officer who always hung out with Mark, right? He's kind of he's naming names in texts to me that I'm not going to just blurt out because, we all know what's going on, Bob. It was pretty obvious even here in Saskatchewan early on how they used the divide and conquer technique here. Boom, our freedom movement that was so strong after they brought in the thugs and broke up the freedom convoy. That was the kind of like the end of it. Everybody went back to sleep or whatever. And some freedom fighters and started fighting amongst themselves. And you're kind of looking at that going, defeating the whole purpose of everything. And that was just when Mark got sick sort of thing. And they kind of like, I always lament the fact that if Mark had been healthy when the freedom convoy happened and he had gone along to Ottawa, things might have been a little bit different down there as far as communication skills going on and the way they were being, but who knows? They would have probably, maybe they turned their whole attention on him anyway there, make him look crazy in the media too. And he would have just been scooped up with all the rest, but you'll never know, right? And so it was really sad what happened to Mark and how he got sick. And it's great for Sean to nurse him through all that. But you have a little bit anger the way that happened. And Sean knows what I'm talking about. The protocols that were used when somebody was sick that came into the hospital that they used was not conducive to, surviving such a thing. Being put into an induced coma is very hard on the system. So I guess we've been along here for almost 2 hours. I want Sean to finish this off, and we'll just say goodbye to everybody. It's draining. The last few shows I've done about Mark, and I keep thinking about him while we're doing this, and he's greatly missed. So we'll end off with Sean, a fond memory of Mark before we go, and I'll sign off. And thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for filling the strings, Slick Licks, Mary Poppins. I pwned you. Thank you for being there. Tinfoil Hat Lady, good show. Hi, you're watching that's just great. So that's our audience. I'm a little emotional. So Sean, because when I saw you in the church and I cried all over you like a slobbering baby there. I'm 62 years old. I thought I was going to be tough enough, but I wasn't. People who don't know Mark wouldn't understand that, but I saw him stand up to all kinds of horrible demonization and being pilloried in the press and all the horrible things that would happen to him, and he would stand up tall against it. He would get his property defaced with graffiti, his trucks broken into, threats in the media, and having all his signs stolen and stuff, and phoning the police, and they don't do nothing about it. It's just the things that were done to him, and he just smiled throughout it, got through it, took it all on himself. He was an inspiration that way because he never returned the hate. He never returned the hate. And whenever he had a chance to meet somebody and talk to them, even if you didn't like him, by 10, 15 minutes in, you go, hey, he's got a point here. And he would win people over just in any situation. He'd talk to everybody. He didn't care what your persuasion was. And he did a couple of videos showing him talking to some left-wing kids, having a great 15, 20-minute conversation. At the end of it, they're shaking hands. That was one of those wonderful things. I wish I could remember that video and save it again because it was great. And that was the kind of guy he was. He was a uniter, not a divider, and I think we're going to miss him. And we got to carry on with his message of that idea, right? Unity. We can do this. We can have our sovereignty, but it's going to be tough. It's going to have to get worse before it gets better. But a fond memory of Sean, of Mark before we go.
Yeah, just the tours, man. Watching him work the crowd. And like Bob was talking about, there's no grassroots in this country. It's all AstroTurf. And if something does rise up, they infiltrate it, they subvert it, and they control it. It's the truth that's going to set us free. And that was Mark's focus, right? He and I believe that, given the right information, people will see what we see, and it will shake them out of their complacency, and they'll do something about it. And that's going to happen at some point, and, when we talk on the road, like after the show and you're in the hotel room at night, pounding back some pizza and talking about the day. And it's just like, where is this going? Well, pain and fear are people's greatest motivators. And, it doesn't hurt enough yet. When it hurts enough, people will be forced to change. As long as it's convenient and comfortable enough to look the other way, I think the majority of people are going to continue to do that. Right? We see that happening right now. And like the stuff that's landing on Main Street, the Epstein files, like, these people belong to a cult. They murder children, right? And that's dropping on Main Street right now. And it isn't just the movie stars, Mark Carney, Stephen Harper, like all of these guys, all the leaders in they cannot allow people like us to get behind podiums in these institutions, because it will fall apart. There is no, that was the thing about Mark. His resolve was infinite. You can't buy us off. What are you going to bribe me with? Right? And they know that, right? They know that. We've been forced out of jobs, financial ruin, public ridicule, slander. It doesn't matter. The truth is on our side. And eventually it will get out. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take more pain. Right? But you look at their effectiveness in keeping people like us out of, political movements and away from podiums that have large reaches, right? Because they know that when people hear the truth, some of them are going to wake up to it. So they're going to, the tighter they grip this, the more that slip through their fingers, right? And it's going to have to, it's coming to a head. Like, look what's been done. Look at the state of healthcare in our nation. Look at the state of immigration in our nation and social cohesion. Look at the economic patterns that we see emerging after this massive printing and devaluing of the currency. Like, this isn't something that's just going away. This is going to come to a head, right? And unfortunately, where, we put our efforts, and Mark and I talked about this all the time. If we could just, and this, I think this is the most frustrating part, and Bob was talking about the fatigue that he's feeling. I'm feeling it too. I think everyone in this movement is feeling the fatigue, because this stops as soon as people say stop. Like, we outnumber them 100 million to 1. If everyone just said, we're not going to play this shit anymore, this is over. But again, convenience, comfort, and distraction. As long as people are more interested in what's going on with the NHL playoffs and the latest whatever show is popular now, right? As long as people are distracted and comfortable, they seem to be tolerating a hell of a lot. Like, I'd say it's pretty obvious right now when you look at the amount of death and disability that we're seeing in our population. We see this massive, rapid cultural shift occurring in our country. Unfortunately, you see these nationalist movements coming, and their animus is towards, these different cultural groups that are here, rather than the people that have brought them here. We deal with the people that brought them here. This problem will take care of itself, right? This artificial scarcity bullshit that we're being fed, there's no reason anyone should go without. In their countries as well, right? I was talking with a friend recently. So I'm a veteran. I served in Afghanistan. There isn't a lot of us in this country. We haven't been in a fight for a long time, And I don't know, given what I've seen so far, I don't know if we have it in us as a nation. I'd like to think we do. There's some of us that are, getting pretty fed up with things. But when I look to the States and I see the that revolutionary spirit that seems to be in their blood down there, and the legacy families of military members. So if I was my age, an American, where my great-grandfather had fought in World War I, my grandfather fought in World War II, my father fought in Vietnam, I fought in Gulf War I, right? And I gave my only son in Afghanistan, and I come to realize that all of those wars were being organized by a supranational entity that was meant to destroy. And my great-grandfather went overseas and killed our German brothers. And my grandfather went overseas and killed our German brothers. And my father went to Vietnam and killed Vietnamese people. And I went to the Middle East and I killed Iraqis. And my son went to Afghanistan and killed Afghans for these fucking criminals. What do you do with that information? And their society is filled with legacy military members who have those Gold Star families with that kind of heritage. When you come to that conclusion that you have been used as a vector of harm against the world, and that your nation is responsible for the murder of millions and millions of people at the behest of this 6,000-year-old death cult, I'd be pretty pissed off. And I'd be willing to use the skill set that I'd been given by these people to end these people. When we come to that, I don't know. But I think we're going to.
I just want to let the CSIS spies out there know that I don't believe anything that Sean Taylor just said right now. I think he's crazy, to tell you the truth. I believe in you guys. In fact, CSIS, if you're listening, I will sell out for $1 million straight up right now. CSIS out there, $1 million. I shut up. In fact, I'll start promoting your stuff. But as long as I'm allowed to say I'm promoting your stuff, I will gladly join the cause because I need the cash. Seriously, right here. This is going to be my Joe Rogan moment, right? I'll sell out for $1 million right here.
Mark believed people armed with the truth will do what needs to be done. You know? And we're seeing glimmers of hope in Gen Z. They seem to be getting it. And they have no hope of social advancement, finding a good partner with the degeneracy in our society.
No chance to own a house, have a sense of ownership.
Yeah.
World Economic Forum telling them
it's too risky to get married.
Being told that there's too many of you anyway because the environment, it's for the sake of climate change, and look at that, and they embedded into them into the elementary school age, and it's in their education that being human is harmful to the planet, and that's the mindset that these Malthusian want them under. And Mark was great at pointing out that program and educating other people. So thanks.
We wanted most was accountability. It would be nice to see the architects and the people that have facilitated this being brought to account for their actions, their treasonous, murderous actions.
Sure would. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Well, we've been here for 2 hours, so I guess we'll sign off. Bob, really quick, where can people find you if you want to promote anything or just?
Facebook's probably the best right now. I don't have my website up and running anymore, and Facebook.
But if people want to talk to you, maybe interview you, you can find you on Facebook, right?
Yeah, here I can give you my email address there too.
Oh, okay. I forgot to load it in as a banner before the show started because I forgot anyway. And
thanks for the conversation, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Sean, where can people find you?
Yeah, I pop up every now and then. I'm getting bees. I'm going to be a beekeeper.
Okay, I get it.
Maybe like Jason Statham.
Well, I know where to find you. People can find you if they want to. You're on Twitter, I do believe, too.
Not really.
No.
I don't post it. Yeah.
Tuning it all out.
I'm pretty much on hiatus right now.
Yeah, I'm going to find Salim's scroll. I do have a scroll for Salim. I want to tell you guys. It's somewhere. My tech is terrible. Salim, where? Oh, there it is. There we go. Salim, I'm running your scroll. Is it showing? Oh, no. Of course not. Okay, so I have a technical issue with my Rumble Studio again. It's not letting me show banners. Oh, my God. Salim, where can people find you?
With you.
Thank you so much. Or with that last interview with Mark, which everybody should go see.
Just
Yes.
as they found me with Mark,
Yeah, all right. But you can find him on Twitter too.
Bob, and Sean.
Thanks, guys. Signing out. Till the next time, because it's now 2 hours in and I'm very tired. Thanks,
All
guys.
right. God bless.
Thanks,
Good night.
Good to get together and reminisce about Mark.
Yeah. Rest in peace, the Grizzly Patriot. I'm sitting in his chair, by the way. Just want to tell you one last time. Yannicka gave me his chair from his studio.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. she phoned us up and went over there and we played with the dog. Well, my wife played with the dog. I tried to stop it from licking me. Don't like dogs licking me. I don't know why. Everybody says, "What's wrong? It's sterile." I go, I don't know about the sterile part. I don't probably, but I just anyway. So thanks a lot, guys. And we'll I just wanted to tell everybody this Saturday I'm going to be having Gord McGill on the show from Autonomous Truckers. He was just recently interviewed again by Tucker Carlson. He's the guy, the trucker that was writing for Newsweek during the Freedom Convoy. And then he followed the Coots saga and reported with Newsweek so that a lot of people knew what was going on. The incredible government overreach that happened here in COVID. He was on Tucker talking about it a couple of times. It's really nice to have a guy like that who's on our side and so articulate and right. He just finished writing a book. So he's going to be on the show Saturday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Eastern Daylight or Standard Time, 7:30 Saskatchewan time, 6:30 BC time. So I'm really excited because Gord's a good guy and done some good stuff for the movement and kind of legitimized it down south of the border far more than up here. You know, I mean, there's a lot. And there you go. That's the difference between Canada and the United States. They have a republic with 50 autonomous states that handled everything differently during COVID. You could tell how it was such a scam because of the way it was treated in different areas. In Florida, people could do anything they want. Nobody was dying and keeling over. It was obvious right away. So anyway, and I'm going on, but thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Good night.
Good night. Bye. Man, that was kind of emotional. I'll just kick you out there, Sean. See ya.
Later.
How come you can't kick out? Oh, there you go. It was an emotional night. I almost cried a couple times, weird enough, because I was remembering what Mark did. The good things he did. It was great. So I want to sign off again this Saturday. Gordon McGill showing up. And it was nice talking about Mark. That's why I wore the PPC thing in his memory, because he ran for the PPC, I think, a couple times. And I ran in his seat in Saskatoon South in the last election in his honor. And it was an uphill climb, and it taught me a lot of lessons and got raked over the coals for it, but tried to do my best politically. So I tried, you guys. I don't know if I'm going to do it again, but that's why I wore the shirt. Memory of Mark. And I know the whole Privy Council thing. We'll talk about it sometime. I get it. But thanks, guys. As always, remember, conventional wisdom is simply conventional deception. And sometimes you just have to go beyond the pale. Till next time. Bye.
Yeah. Beyond the pale. I stands as the waters. They sent our sons to war. Yeah. Yeah. Beyond the pale. Yeah. They sent our sons to war, a cruel charade, a racket built on blood, where fortunes are made. They lie about the reason, spin tales so tall, while heroes die for profit and empires fall. Politics, a game, a circus of clowns, puppets on strings, they parade through our towns. They distract and divide us, with hate as their tool, pitting brother against brother in a world they misrule. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, yeah, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. An anti-human agenda, plain as the day. They view us as bugs in their cold, heartless play. Eat insects, they sneer while they feast on the land. Depopulation's their goal with the tightening hand. Civil rights torn to shreds in the name of their peace. A police state rises where freedoms all cease. Gaslight us with propaganda, their lies never end. Twisting truth in their grip till our minds start to bend. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, yeah, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. Order out of chaos, their sinister creed. They spark the flames, then offer what we need. Economic stagnation, they choke out our dreams, while divide and conquer rips us at the seams. They fan every fracture, they stoke every fight, left against right, till we're blind to the light. Yet beyond the pale lies the truth they conceal, a world where we're free, where our hearts can still heal. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, yeah, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. So step past their warnings, their fences, their lies. See the world they've been hiding with wide open eyes. Beyond the pale, where the power grows frail, we'll reclaim our future and truth will prevail. Beyond the pale, beyond the pale. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. When the powers that be warn you not to go beyond the pale, yeah, then that's a sure sign there's more to the tale. Beyond the pale, yeah.